Sometimes I wonder why. Why do police officers need training? Why do I need to go through all the training that I go through? Does my experience matter? Does my experience as a police officer with 13 years on the road, taking an average of 10 to 15 dispatch calls per day, does that matter? Does it have any value? Does it have any worth whatsoever? I want you guys to answer that question, because the reason I mention that is because I have all of this training, all of this experience, a tremendous amount of experience. And when it comes to police officers across the country, with the area where I work and the type of training that I have, I'm a very highly trained, very highly qualified police officer. But when I tell the world what I am trained to do and what police officers are trained to do and how police officers are supposed to handle calls for service, I have people that have absolutely no training and no experience telling me that I'm wrong, that it should have been handled a certain way. It absolutely boggles my mind. That is what we're going to be talking about today. Not just that, but also I'm going to kind of admit that I have failed you guys. I failed you guys by talking about a topic on a video, and I didn't present it the proper way. I might have presented this topic in a way that was more advanced than I should have. I might have skipped over the stuff that I thought was second nature in order to get to the more advanced stuff that I find interesting. So in that sense, I have failed you. But I think that both cases can be true. What we're talking about today is going to be this incident right here in Akron, Ohio, that I did a video on the other day, but I need to readdress this video due to the comments on that video. And some of it, you know, kind of where I was with my first point, the inspiration for this video today was actually this dumbass comment right here. And it's not really even worth addressing because this person is clearly stupid. Probably got some severe mental challenges, and I shouldn't be insulting them or making fun of them. It is incredibly frustrating because people like this go out on the internet and spread their ignorant ideas. Whether or not they have the ability to control it or not is besides the point. But people will take this person's comments and statements and they share it with all of their friends, and people will just believe them, and it grows like wildfire. And that's how you get all of these ignorant statements about police officers. The comment, remember, this is a video where I started off the video saying the officer is going to be justified. He's going to be cleared of this shooting, but here is what he should have done, and this would have prevented it. That was my stance on that video. So this guy says, I got to tell you, in this case, what was the officer's spouse to do? Take the chance that it was real. Wait till he got shot. How are you spouse to do? Just asking. Maybe he was using voice to text and the spelling errors were just his voice to text. But what he did with this comment is he proved that he just made a comment on the video based on the thumbnail and the title of the video without actually watching the video, because I very clearly explained what an officer is supposed to do when he finds himself in this situation right here. And actually, I'm going to go to the live video because I like this spot better. When I went through the video, I talked about how the officer, when he was in this moment right here, what he was faced with was a person that was armed with a gun. That's the only knowledge he had, is that there was a person with a gun was turning towards him. He has to assume that gun is real. He protected his life by discharging his firearm, and he shot this kid in the hand. I went on to talk about how, it was a toy gun and it was a 15-year-old kid, and we don't need to put ourselves in situations where we're killing 15-year-old kids that weren't actually doing anything wrong. because it was a toy gun. A lot of people got hung up on that. And that's my fault. What I want to do is I want to readdress this topic of what you're supposed to do in this situation. And I want to take the idea out that this was a child. And I want to take away the idea that this was a toy gun. Let's assume for a moment that this was an adult with a real gun. Because when this goes to grand jury, because all police involved shootings go to grand jury, if the local DA wants to charge this police officer, he's going to get charged. That's it. Police officers are charged for justified shootings all of the time in this day and age. And I want to talk to you about the justifications that this DA is going to use and his arguments that he's going to use in court. And the reason I'm going to talk about those things is because we as police officers need to, because potentially this officer could get convicted. I can tell you, if he had killed this kid, he would have a very difficult court battle ahead of him. If there was a good DA that really wanted to hammer this guy, he could, especially if he killed this kid. And what that would mean was that this then turns into an unjustified shooting and illegal shooting. And I want to talk about the ways to prevent unjustified illegal shootings, right? That's our goal. Your goal as a police officer is to do everything within the bounds of the law. You don't want to be doing illegal things. You don't want to be violating people's rights. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where a DA can assume that you violated somebody's rights. How are we trained? How are we trained to approach somebody with a gun? It doesn't matter if it's a child with a gun. Doesn't matter if it's an adult with a gun. It is a person with a gun. That is what the call was. If you're called about a person with a gun, you respond a certain way. If that person had a toy gun and you responded the appropriate way and you ended up having lethal force, it is what it is. If that person had a real, did I say toy gun, and they turn and you got to defend yourself, you don't know it's a toy at the time. If they have a real gun and they spin on you, you got to defend yourself. If they're holding a cell phone and somebody called in and said that there's a male black wearing all black with white t-shirt or with white tennis shoes walking down my street, point a gun at cars, and he's walking with his cell phone on his chest, walking down the road, and a police officer pulls up to him and the kid's got his cell phone and turns and says, "What?" This kid would have gotten shot by this officer in that situation as well. That's what it looks like to me. Now, can you get shot with a cell phone in your hand and be a justified shooting? Yes, under the right circumstances, because it goes under what the officer believes at the time is the threat. That's how we judge these shootings. What I am trying to communicate to people is, one, how to avoid putting yourself in a situation where you have to make that split-second decision. And two, the other reason why we're trained to respond to calls this way. I spent what I believe I spent the majority of the time on the video talking about not being in this proximity to a suspect when you get out of your car, and because that it shortens your reactionary gap and you are forced to discharge your weapon. The other thing that you have to remember, and I failed to mention in that particular video, but this is probably the biggest reason why we are trained not to drive right up on suspects like this, is because if that was a person with a firearm and he had ill intent, and I pull up on him, he has the jump on me. This guy's walking down the street. I've got guns here. He's walking down the street with a gun in his hand. I pull directly up to him. He hears my engine. He hears my brakes. He looks over. He sees it's the police. It's very easy to kill a police officer in this situation. You as a police officer don't want to be in a situation where you're pulling up on somebody and all he has to do is he can shoot you while you're still putting your car in park. We're trained to avoid that. We are trained to park at a far enough distance away from somebody that when we get out of our car, we are not automatically in a position where we are being ambushed. The other part is that it's incredibly difficult. If I pull up on someone and I'm that close and he turns towards me and starts blasting, I'm sitting in my cruiser, supposed to have my seatbelt on. Usually we take our seatbelts off before we get immediately on scene. But I have to get down into my triple retention holster. I have to pop the slide off. I have to push this button in with my thumb. I have to pull the gun directly out because my holster is so tight that I can't pull the gun forward or back. I have to pull it straight out. I'm also wearing a bulletproof vest that when I'm sitting down actually pushes down on my duty belt. If you're sitting in your car and you have to draw your firearm, it's not the easiest thing to do. You also, I'm right-handed. I control my vehicle with my right hand. I can't draw my firearm and put the car in park at the same time. There's a lot of reasons why you don't pull directly up on a suspect that is or an armed suspect. You don't pull directly up on an armed suspect if it's not an active shooter situation. If it's an active shooter situation, that person is walking down the road, popping off rounds. You get there as fast as you can. You take out that threat as quick and safely as possible. A lot of times that's going to mean that you don't get out of the car, use your vehicle for deadly force, you eliminate that threat, and then you get out and you clean up the mess. That's the fact of the matter. But the thing that was really frustrating with the response to that video is everybody was caught up on, well, why is a 15-year-old kid carrying a gun that looks real? Why is he doing this out in public? What is wrong with him? Is this rap music doing this to him? And I also saw people saying, it's a police officer's job to put himself in danger. That's what they're paid to do. They're paid to make these very quick decisions with very little information. Well, no, that's not what we're paid to do, and that's not what we're trained to do. We're trained to do things as safe as possible and not take unnecessary risks. By pulling up to a suspect like this, you're putting yourself in danger. If this was a bad guy with ill intent, that could have very well been a dead police officer. That is something that I forgot to mention in that video, and I apologize. But also, the idea of it's a kid with a fake gun. Let's say it's a kid with a real gun. Let's say it's an adult with a real gun. The part where I mentioned, you have to be careful about listening to these 911 callers. The call was that there was a person with a gun walking down the street, pointing the gun at houses. I would approach this as, I would keep that in the back of my mind, but also this is a person with a gun walking down the street. If there's a person walking down the street with a gun in their hand, is that a crime? If there's a person walking down the street with a gun in their hand, are you allowed to shoot that person? No, you're not. When I talked about how callers embellish things, if an old lady looks out her window, this is something that happens all the time, and they see a person with a gun, they always call in and say that person is threatening people with that gun. We also get a lot of calls of a person with a gun where the person didn't have a gun and the caller never saw a gun. The caller was just so terrified that they imagined there was a gun. And then when we start talking to them, they admit that there was never a gun. I responded on one of these calls just a couple of days ago. This was a road rage incident. We had all just left the sub after roll call. Somebody calls in and says, I'm driving down the road in a white Ford SUV. There's a guy behind me driving a silver Chevy sedan. He just pointed a gun at me and threatened to shoot me. We pull out, we get behind this Chevy sedan, we pull it over, we do a felony stop. The guy gets out of the car, couple steps to the left, couple steps back, down on the ground, hands on your head, down on your knees. We come up, grab one hand, put it in a cuff, the other hand, cuff you up, get you up, search your immediate area for firearm, all of this. And this person is like, bro, what is going on? We're like, we'll explain it in a minute. We go up and we check the car. There's no gun in the guy's person. There's no gun in the car. We get another officer that's up with the caller. And then that officer gets on the air and says, hey, this person never saw a gun, but they were cut off in traffic. So they flipped off the guy in the silver car. The guy in the silver car started shaking his hand, yelling and screaming at the caller. And the caller believed they had a gun. People embellish things when they call 911 all the time. And that is something that I keep in mind when I'm responding to calls. A person walking down the street with a gun in their hand in the state of Ohio is not a crime. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're shooting someone that is not committing a crime. There could be good reason for that guy to be. And I've had this before too. I responded to a call about a man with an assault rifle shooting at a house. And we pulled up, we did what we're supposed to do. We parked about 4 or 5 houses down. We got our guns out. We used cover. We kind of bounded between cars and doing all the things that we're supposed to do. We don't see anybody outside. We go up and we knock on the door to see if there's victims inside. And this guy comes out and we tell him what happened. He says, yeah, I have a pellet gun that's black, has a pistol grip on it. It looks like an assault rifle. And I was shooting mice in my yard. I don't know. I live in a dirty neighborhood. This guy had so many mice in his yard. He was shooting them with a pellet gun. We got a call about a man with an assault rifle shooting up a house. There's a reason why we are trained to park away from the suspect. There's reasons why that is good tactics. You need to forget everything about, was it a gun? Was it a toy gun? Was it a real gun? Was it a cell phone? You have to park a little bit away so that you're not put in that situation where you have to make a split-second decision to save your life. Because if you pull up on that guy with a gun and he has ill intent, you pull up on him, you're dead. So the officer is pulling up on this gun run with the assumption, oh my God, I'm so close to this guy. He's right there. He's got a gun in his hand. He's turning, he's pointing at me. I'm going to shoot him before he shoots me. That's what he did. It's not what we're trained to do. That's the entire point of my video. Don't worry about what is a 15-year-old kid doing with a gun that looks real. Why are gun manufacturers making guns that look real? Is he screwing with the gun to make it look real? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a real gun, fake gun, or a cell phone, or a lighter, or just some inanimate object that he picked up off the street, a metal pipe that people thought was a firearm. If it looks like a firearm, you're going to treat it like a firearm. It doesn't matter if it's real, fake, dangerous, or not dangerous. We treat them all the same. And this right here, this stuff where you pull up directly on the suspect, is not how we're trained. That's the entire point of the video. We want to prevent horrible things from happening, because this situation right here with Tamir Rice, that was a horrible thing that happened. Tamir Rice was not a dangerous person. Was he doing something stupid? Yes. We don't shoot stupid people in this country. We don't shoot suspicious people in this country. We shoot dangerous people in this country. If those officers in the Tamir Rice incident had done what they were supposed to do and parked a little ways off, had a little bit of standoff distance and given him commands, and then he pointed his gun at them, they would have been good to go. It wouldn't have been controversial. Those officers went through hell and are still going through hell because of the tactics that they used that day on a justified shooting. It's unnecessary. You're putting your own life at risk by using these bad tactics. By putting your own life at risk, you're also putting the public at greater risk. This is why we're trained. I think that's it. That's it for me today. Thanks for watching.